Hello, fourth grade. It is Monday, April 20th, and you would not believe the issues I've had trying to record this particular set of slides. It has become the bane of my existence, technology wise, not the actual content, just technology trying to make this happen. So I'm going to try again, and it will work this time. All right. So we are continuing on with our free verse week. We're in week 2 of free verse, basically. And we are talking about this handsome chap right here, Walt Whitman. And the poem we're going to look at is I Hear America Singing. And we will talk briefly about him. I usually do this in the biography section. But I thought since we were going to spend a little bit more time on him, I'll give you a little insight into who he is. He lived between 1819 and 1892, which means he lived during the Civil War because that was in the 1860s. He's often called the father of free verse, so it's appropriate that we are reading him. And also Emily Dickinson, I believe someone called her the mother of free verse. I don't know if that is, I know I've definitely heard him, but as I was researching Emily Dickinson, that came up. Um, but he was one of the first people to use it as a form on the reg, if you will. And he wrote Leaves of Grass, which I left my book in the other room, um, where basically he started it and published it and then continued to revise it for years and years until his death. I mean, he consistently worked on this magnum opus, and just on a personal note, it was one of the something that when I read when I was in high school that I was like, oh my goodness, what is this? And I just fell in love with it. So he is unlike the people that we have studied so far. He doesn't have formal education at all. I mean, he didn't have a school that he graduated from. He wasn't trained as a writer. He just loved to write, and he felt like he had a lot to say, so he just said it. Um, and he is a controversial figure then because of various reasons, but also now because of the things that he wrote about and how he represented what he saw as his America. Um, but he's also considered in the canon kind of the first American voice because before him, people kind of did what had been done in the past. They may have done it extremely well, they may have been beyond brilliant, but he pioneered a new style and he talked about things that other people didn't necessarily talk about. And he did it in a way that was really unusual for the time. And I like this guy. There are pros and cons to Whitman's writing, but on the whole, he's somebody that I have really been greatly affected by. Oh, why do we study him today? We've mentioned a couple of these things. The first unique American poetic voice that was kind of an export from the United States before we were really reading a lot of British work. Like we had something to offer that was something new and uniquely American, so people wanted to read it. He remarks on the nature of the country. So since he lived through the Civil War, we actually get an insight into what it was like being a human during one of the most tumultuous times of American history. And even though his work seems like something simple, and I say that because he uses a lot of repetition because it's free verse and it's not that structured, um, it kind of masks it as an outer layer, and inside the themes and the way that he kind of broke from style, it's very revolutionary. And it has a lot to say that is still relevant today, and it's worth looking at. So, whether we talk about pros and cons of Whitman, we can use it as a launching point to talk about why. So, we talk about the groups that he left out when he's talking about what is America, because we're talking about this. This poem is called "I Hear America Singing." He's talking about the America he hears, so we want to know the groups that he left out. And is this a personal reason? Is this a personal thing for him? Did he leave it out because of personal bias, or because of the time. We can look at that. And does it matter when we're talking about an artist, whether it's we're talking about it in context or we're talking about it as a personal thing? And how do we separate who he is from his work? Or can you do that? That is a question that people have been asking since they started criticizing and analyzing literature. So here's Uncle Walt here as a younger fellow. And so why are we reading this poem? This I Hear America Singing, because he has 400 pages of poetry that we could choose from in Leaves of Grass. This poem is a good introduction to Walt Whitman. It's good for fourth grade. It's easily accessible and it still has something to say. It still has something that we can talk about, and it still helps you as a writer. And it's historically relevant because we can look at Walt Whitman's world and compare it to the world that you know. Is his America the same as your America? And we can talk about whether, what that means, and whether or not that's a controversial take. Um, so I'm going to read this poem, and hopefully I will not absolutely butcher it. And then we will talk about it and dissect it, and give you. We'll talk about insight. So I hear America singing. I hear America singing the varied carols I hear, those of mechanics, each one singing his as it should be blithe and strong, the carpenter singing his as he measures his plank or beam, the mason singing his as he makes ready for work or leaves off work, the boatman singing what belongs to him in his boat, the deckhand singing on the steamboat deck, the shoemaker singing as he sits on his bench, the hatter singing as he stands, the woodcutter's song, the plowboy's on his way in the morning, or at noon, intermission, or at sundown, the delicious singing of the mother, or of the young wife at work, or of the girl sewing or washing, each singing what belongs to him or her and to no one else. The day, what belongs to the day, and at night, the party of young fellows, robust, friendly, singing with open mouths their strong, melodious songs. So you see a lot of repetition. You see that it doesn't have any meter or rhyme, and we'll talk about that. So the first thing we do is we obviously look at the words that we don't know. In case you guys are curious about some of these words you don't know, varied is going to be diverse or assorted. So the varied carols I hear, he's hearing all these different songs. Carols are songs. Um, and then blithe, the mechanics, each one singing his as it should be, blithe and strong. Blithe, I really like this word. It just sounds nice to say, but I like the definition of it. It means a casual or cheerful indifference. You just don't care, but you're in a good mood. You're kind of, it's just kind of this laissez faire attitude when you're blithe. Um, and the mason singing, a mason is a builder and worker in stone, and we're going to talk more about all the actual definitions of who these people are and their jobs. And robust down here at the party of young fellows, robust, which means strong and healthy. We imagine these strapping young people. Okay, get out of the way, slide thing. And then the last one is melodious. And you guys probably know that word from music, but it means having a pleasant tune. So when they're singing with open mouths, they're strong, melodious songs. This is a pleasant thing to hear. Um, so who are these singers? Just in case you don't know, mechanics work with machines, not just auto mechanics, but there's all kinds of mechanics. And they can create machines and then they can maintain machines. Carpenters work with wood. Um, Masons work with stone. Boatmen works on boats. They can create them or they can maintain them. And then the deckhand is someone who actually works on a boat, like when they're traveling around, swabbing the decks and keeping it clean and doing all that sort of thing. And then shoemakers makes and repairs shoes, hats makes and repairs hats. It's pretty simple. But people used to have to get their shoes and hats made. They didn't go into a department store. And this was published in 1855, perhaps. I have it later on the slide. In 1850, you didn't go into just a department store and pick out like one of a million hats or order it on Amazon. You went and saw a hatter and he had a couple of hats that he made on display, or you could say, well, I'm kind of looking for so and so, and you would get that from the Hatter. Um, Not too long ago, there was a place downtown called Bonton Hatters, and you could still go in there, and he was a shoe shine and hat repair and all that kind of stuff. But alas, it is not there anymore. And it had been there for years. I mean, like since 1906 or something like that. So woodcutters, they cut firewood and would sell it because people didn't have stoves with electricity. They had wood burning stoves, and that was what they would cook their food on. So having firewood was very important. Plowboys, driving a plow, and that's usually with an animal. Um, and so, they would also they're turning around and turning that into food, right? They're plowing the fields, they're putting the seeds out, and they're maintaining the farm. And then we have our three gals in the poem: mother, young wife, and girl. So they don't really have an occupation. A woman with children is a mother. A young wife is just a recently married woman without children, and the girl is just a young unmarried female. So that's what they do, you know. Young unmarried girl, you know what that means. I don't know. Just being silly. So let's talk about the speaker. So this is an onlooker. We're saying that it's an American, but it really could be anybody. But from Walt's perspective, he's an American, and so he's observing the society that he's in. And the theme is America, period. But it's also the working class. We're getting a glimpse of the people who do the manual labor jobs, the hard work of America. So 1855 was when Leaves of Grass was published. But as I mentioned before, he revised the sucker until he was on his deathbed. I think there is actually one called the Deathbed Edition, which was he was still tinkering with it until the day he died. And form is free verse, and it's very apparent that it's free verse. And I kind of it's free verse, and whenever I hear his stuff, I almost feel like he has a preacher's tone. It has that hymnal quality. Maybe it's the repetition. Um, Maybe it's just the way that his the cadence of his voice. I feel like someone is preaching to me a little bit. I mean, it's got all of these long sentences, and everything is just so wandering and ambling and also joyous. So it's kind of worshipful, but it's free verse. So the plot is we have Whitman, lauding the varied, strong working class voices he hears that he believes represents America, the America that he sees, that opening up his window and what he's seeing. He was a New York City guy. He's imagining, all the people that he would meet if he were to walk down the street and see who's there, or if you were to, be at the Battery or whatever, like he's thinking of what he's going to see when he's out and about. So we don't have any rhyme or meter. And let's talk about poetic devices, because even though this is a free verse poem, we have poetic devices that are at play here. Um, he may have not been trained, but he still knew how to evoke things using literary devices. So I've got here assonance. We've got America singing the varied carols I hear. I mean, the I is very prevalent in there. That's going to be that vowel sound. And same here, singing his as it should be blithe in this second line. And the I also comes into play again. So we have alliteration, the boatman singing what belongs to him in his boat, got that the B sound, and then we've got the shoemaker singing. And then one of the biggest things that he uses throughout his poetry, and besides imagery probably, is repetition. He repeats himself. He talks the mechanics, each one singing, the carpenter singing, the mason singing, the boatman singing, the deckhand singing, the shoemaker singing, and he does this for effect, right? There's he's not just repeating himself because he doesn't know any other words. He's doing it because he's making it a song almost, and this song is about someone singing. And if you think about books of the Bible, like Psalms, sometimes that they sound different. than the verse or the epistles or things that when you hear in the Bible. This has got that hymnal or parable, not parable, psalm quality, because he is worshiping what these people do. He's praising them in this way, saying that they are the essence of America. So that repetition is supposed to hit home. And I don't know off the top of my head what they're called, but there's a lot of Middle Eastern forms that use this device, and it's part of what they do. And they'll like repeat certain words in different parts of the sentence, in different parts of the line, in different ways. And having repetition um, is a trick almost, and it hits home the important thing that you're trying to say. So he's singing, they're singing, 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 singing. He keeps talking about it. And he's also singing a song about the singers, play within a play. So the imagery, he's very good with imagery, especially in Song of Myself. Oh my goodness, it's dripping with imagery. But the delicious singing of the mother, which I think is fun because the mother is probably making food and she has delicious singing. Singing with open mouths, we really get this visual of the people, when they're robust and they're strong and they're singing with open mouths and everything is so hearty and lively, just like new young America, which at that time would have only been, it wouldn't even have been 100 years old. And then the strong melodious songs. I mean, like they're not singing some tinny um, off kilter shanty. These are strong melodious songs that these people are singing, and they're singing them together. And as they sing them together, it turns into the song of America, right? So, how do we classify these singers? I mean, there's a couple different ways, and I'm sure there are ways that I am missing. But we have male and female. We have the mechanics, the carpenters, the masons, but he says definitively he. And then we have the female workers, the mother, the young wife, and that's and the sewing or washing girl. Um, and the girls don't get to do the fun stuff. I mean, like I'm not that I mean, these girls may really want to wash laundry, but they're not out there cutting wood, according to him. And then the creators and the maintainers, there are those in this that create, like the mechanics and the carpenters. I mean, if you've ever seen someone work with wood and it starts out as a piece of, a log, and then it turns into something beautiful, that they are creating something. The shoemaker is creating the shoe, the hatter is making the hat, but then they're also maintaining as well, like the deckhand is going to be maintaining the ship while he's on the ship. And a mechanic can also maintain a machine. So they can be creators and maintainers, or they can be separate. Um, we also have the question of race. It's not mentioned in here, but that doesn't mean it's not implied because of the time period. And this is where it comes into play. And also with what we're doing for homework tonight, we're going to read someone that has a different perspective of America. And Langston Hughes wrote his, I too, pretty much in response to what white version of America was perceived to be, and he decided to say what his was. Um, so we are assuming that all of these people that he's talking about are white because of the confines of society. In 1850, the Civil War had not happened, which meant slavery was still very much something that was happening. So his version of America, we're seeing these robust, melodious songs, but we're not seeing the reality of what's happening beneath the surface. There's a lot of work being done by people that are not free. And so, we can't say that his version of America is necessarily the entire version of America because it's not encompassing of the whole equation, right? So, even though, I don't think because of I don't think that it was a personal um, choice. This is all my opinion, just of the studies that I did. But I do think he is overlooking it because of what's going on. He was a Northerner. He loved Abraham Lincoln, supported the North during the war. So, we know that he was on the side of freedom for slaves. But, when you write a poem about what America is and you don't talk about um, the singers that, have a different song that are still a part of America, you're also leaving them out. So, leaving things out by omission is still leaving something out. Did that make sense? That didn't really make sense. Scratch that last sentence. Okay, so generalizations. We're just going to make some generalizations about what we think about Americans after reading his poem, right? So, when we read this poem, we assume that these Americans have many different careers. We assume that they are unique because he talks about how unique they are and the different things that they do. By his poem, they really like what they do, right? I mean, they are singing, they are happy, they're going out at night and visiting with each other and singing these beautiful songs, and they're all healthy and strong. I mean, it's just beautiful, rosy cheeked version of America, right? I mean, it sounds like these guys have it going on, and they're very free, right? These people are extremely free according to his um, version of events, which they were. I mean, they lived in America, they were free, and so we do get that. Um, but and forget this bottom rung thing. That was a thing long story. But the literary elements, we're going to use the graphic organizer to talk about um, these people. So, like I said, we have diverse careers. Now, they are the working class. Okay, he's not talking about doctors and lawyers. He's not talking about politicians. He's not talking about um, the wealthy elite that that don't have to work. He's talking about the people that have calloused hands and that work with tools and probably make enough to put food on the table. They're not going on vacations. They're not. I mean, this is manual labor. So we have to understand that he is talking about the backbone of America. I say that because he's leaving out the entire, you know, uh, he's leaving slavery out of it completely. He's talking about the working class. Um, but that is what that's who he's talking about purely. We are assuming that they are happy with their lives, the men the work, the women stay at home. He's not talking about the women doing anything other than doing washing or being mothers or anything like that. And then also these folks are white. I mean, he might be talking about some immigrants that he is not. um, you know he for the most part, we get a vision of Anglo America. And that these people are creators, they're creating things, even if it's creating an America that he is very proud of. So, theme or concept. So, what big ideas does he want us to learn from this poem? And what big ideas do we get from it by reading it? Whether or not he meant that or not. Especially, we're looking at it so far from in the future, looking back on it, what do we see? So our big ideas is freedom. Are these people free? Yes, they are free. They live in a democratic society. Um, but they also are manual labor folks that I don't know if you know anything about people that do manual labor jobs even today, but they don't make a lot of money. They don't have any. They don't have a ton of money saved in the bank necessarily. A lot. They don't. Those jobs don't pay a lot, or if they do, they're very dangerous. And it's taxing on their bodies, it's taxing on their health, it's difficult. And so, yes, they are free. They are free to vote. They are free to change jobs, but it's pretty difficult. Um, Diversity. Is this a diverse population of Americans? Not really. He's not talking about the upper class. He's not talking about the slaves. He's not even really talking about women. This is about working men, um, which is a large population of what's going on at the time. And there's nothing wrong with him talking about a subset of America, but it is not a representation of actual America in 1850 because he's leaving out a lot. So that's one of the, like, I hear America singing, he's hearing a song that could be on an album, if that makes sense. I know you guys don't listen to albums anymore. That's so sad. Um, oh, hard work. These guys are working so hard and they seemingly love it. What are they working for? Evidently, it's for the greater good of America. And if you will ask a lot of people these days, that is what the working class is working towards. And that is what the working class, a lot of them will tell you, that is what they're working towards. But I can tell you, as someone who has a working class dad, he's a coal miner. He's a legitimate coal miner. Up until recently, he was literally underground, blowing up rocks and scooping it out and finding coal and stuff. Um, it is really hard work, and it may pay higher than working at a as a pizza delivery guy, but it's super dangerous, and his health is not great, even though he's in his 60s. And you know, he's been through a lot from doing a really, really manual labor job, um, and his body is suffering. And he's like he worked tirelessly as when I was a kid, but we were not wealthy at all, and so they work really hard, but what are they working for? And Whitman would say that they're doing the best for their family and they're doing the best for their country. And a lot of people would say that right now. My dad would tell you that. Um, but it's also difficult to see people work so hard and not make a lot of money and also have health issues. So, you know, these people are singing. They seem so happy and such a great representation of America, but we always have to look on the other side of the coin and just see what it is. And for the record, I love this poem. I think it's a great snapshot of 1850. A guy in New York City writing about America. I do think it's a great poem and I love it. And I love Whitman. But one of the things that we have to do when we look at poetry, especially when we're looking at poetry in context, like from a different, we have to think about it critically, removing ourselves from the equation. And I talked to some of you, I believe, last year, and I don't know if I did it with you in third grade, but I talked to the upper school about it. When we think critically about something, we remove ourselves from the equation, and we have to look at a problem from all angles. So even though we are we always bring our own bias to it. So when we look at a poem, even if we don't like it or what, we have to think about what the person was doing, what the time that they lived in. We have to think about what's being left out, what's not being said. We have to think about those things because it causes us to remove bias and to know more about the story. The same thing goes for when we're analyzing news articles these days. There's a lot of the last couple of years talking about, and this is a tangent, but it's relevant. Talking about fake news, both sides of the coin. Everybody's talking fake news. This is fake. This is fake. This is fake. Because of the internet, we have to be very careful with who we believe because social media has made it really easy for anyone to say anything and say, "Oh, I heard that so and so did this, and this is totally true." It's just like the rumor mill, but like in school. "Oh, I heard so and so like somebody. I heard so and so said this about somebody," but then you put it on the internet and you make it about global things, right? You have to be a discerning reader, whether it's about poetry, whether it's about news, whether it's about a news program. Um, Always think, is there something that I'm missing? Is there something that they're missing? Is there something that's not being said or something that's being left out or something that's not researched? Does this actually, when you're talking about informational stuff? So when we look at somebody saying that this is a representation of America, we have to make sure that we are looking at it in a way that is this actually a representation of America? Um, and what we're going to do on Friday is we are going, not Friday, sorry, Wednesday, is we are going to talk about Langston Hughes side by side with this poem. So tonight you're going to read I Too by Langston Hughes. You can find it in the assignment, and I've got it linked to that, or you can find it on the left side of the topic page. I've linked to it there. And then I just want you to write a learning log. I don't want you to dissect it. I just want you to talk about what you learned from it, what you think about it, all the general things. If you have any questions about it, I just want you to tell me what you got out of it. And then we'll come back together on Wednesday, and we are going to talk about the differences between the two and the similarities of the two. And tomorrow, I don't have this written down. I don't have this written down. Let me see. Yeah, that's just my works cited. Tomorrow, your assignment is to go to Common Lit. This is the first time we're going to do this, so don't freak out. If it asks you for the classroom code, it's on the topic page under the assignments information. It's got the topic page and all that. It's got the classroom code. It may ask for your email. It's nothing weird. It is a teacher website. I want you to be able to look at this, look at the poems on there, and they ask you questions, okay? I want you to answer the questions. I don't want you to worry about getting anything wrong, but I want you to answer them thoughtfully. One of them is listed as 8th grade and one is as 9th grade. That I think they're that don't just ignore that. The reason that it has that on there is because, by Common Core standards and this and that, different things are taught different times. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be looking at it, and it doesn't mean it's over your head. Okay, you guys are talking about concepts that some 8th graders are talking about. It's all cool. So just go to Common Lit, and I gave you the links for both of them. It's on the left side. One says Common Lit, Walt Whitman, and then one says Common Lit Langston Hughes. Click on those, go to it, and read it, answer the questions, and all of us. You don't have to do anything. But if you have any hiccups, just let me know and we'll work through it. But this is the first time I've used it, so I'm fully aware it's different, but I know you guys can do it. And it's just an experiment because it's a really great website. And if we can utilize the resources, I want to. So I hope that you guys have a wonderful day. Trying to get out of here. There we go. Just let me know if you have any questions, and we'll be back on Wednesday to talk about Whitman and Langston Hughes together and tear it apart.